Bless you. All right. Today's Torah portion. There's a lot there. But one of the things we're going to look at is in chapter 11 of Numbers. Let me. And what we read here, chapter 11, verse 1, but the people began complaining about their hardships to Adonai. When Adonai heard it, his anger flared up. Fire from Adonai broke out against them and consumed the outskirts of the camp. Then the people cried to Moshe. Moshe prayed to Adonai, and the fire abated. The place was called Taberah, burning, because Adonai's fire broke out against them. And what we want to look at here is next, the mixed crowd that was with them were waiting for an easier life, while the people of Israel, for their part, also renewed their weeping and said, if only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt. It cost us nothing. And the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic. But now we are withering away. We have nothing to look at but manna. Though the people of Israel, and not just the people of Israel, but it says the mixed company, began to complain, began to get greedy. For um, Being on the road like that definitely was not an easy time. Uh, it was a hard life. Camping, probably having to gather firewood and stuff, uh, setting up the tents. And to be honest, with you, I really don't know what they did during the day. Really, I like to think that during their time of camping and stuff, that they would prepare their food to get their firewood and make sure they had fires and stuff. God provided all this stuff for them. Um, and I think they would have also been learning Torah from Moshe, learning God's instructions, bringing things up to Moshe, as it says, and up to the other judges that Moshe appointed. And as we know, this, like what we read today here in Zechariah, that um, says in verse 14, sing thou to Zion, rejoice, for here I am coming, and I will live among you, says Adonai. When that time comes, themselves to Adonai, they I will live among you. Then you will know that it was Adonai Sabaoth who sent me to you. It's kind of a strange thing to say. Well, one, the nations, right? Those nations, um, says that many nations will join themselves to Adonai. They will join themselves to Israel. They will join themselves to Israel. And it says, they will be my people, and I will live among you, talking to Israel. So they're going to join themselves to God, uh, and they will be God's people, just as Israel is God's people. And he says, and I will live among you. Not them or anybody else, but you. As they become part of Israel, then he says, and I will dwell among you, including those people from the mixed company. But as we see here, back in our portion, um, the mixed crowd that was with them grew greedy for an easier life. Okay, so they grew greedy for life. Um, and Israel remembered it wasn't easy in there, but they remembered that they got all the food that they needed for free. They grew it, they got it, it cost them nothing. But did it really cost them nothing? They were slaves. They're looking at this in kind of a wrong way. They've become greedy. They've forgotten about their slavery. That yes, it did cost them. It cost them their lives, uh, their freedom. And yes, they got this stuff because they were slaves. They needed to be fed and stuff so that they could continue their work for their slave masters, right? And sometimes we do the same thing in our walk with God. You know, we see our friends going off and doing stuff that that isn't necessarily right, maybe, or that isn't where God wants us to go. And they're having a good time and whatever else. And here we are, we're struggling a lot of times. A lot of times God's people struggle and struggle for a reason. It's that we can become dependent on God, right? Dependent on Him. Trust Him to take care of us. And then all these things that our friends are doing aren't necessarily the right things, right? We know that. You know, I mean, how many friends have you had that jump off a bridge? Do we do this? Do we do the same thing? Not unless we investigate what's under there, right? But just because they do it doesn't mean we do it, right? Especially if it's just because people are uh, uh, out there drinking and driving or doing drugs or living unhealthy lifestyles, uh, unbiblical lifestyles. That doesn't mean it's right just because the majority is doing it. And that's a unique thing in our country that we're supposed to be a republic. It's not, we're a democratic republic. Um, so that mob rule, the majority don't rule over everything because they could, in a true democracy, the um, the majority would rule. So if they decided they wanted to take your rights away because you're a minority, they could do that. But in our democratic republican, people are uh, voted to represent you. We have two senators from each state, right? And representative, at least one, but many states have many more because of population, to represent the people, all the people, okay? And so that one group doesn't powerful over the other group and so forth. You know, something that we've seen lately um, between Democrats and Republicans. Not that either one is any better than the other. They're still politicians, and politicians are, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's a sin to be a politician because you make unscrupulous compromises and I mean, how many of these politicians have got in there that really don't have that much money, but they come out millionaires, you know, when they leave, and really don't represent you, the people, um, and that's not right. And so, in if we were a true democracy, then the majority would rule. That's why the elections are set up that way for the presidential election in particular, so that uh, the electoral college is the one that makes the decision who the president is, because people in general uh, will vote not necessarily for what is right for everybody else, but what is right for themselves, you know? And a lot of times it has to do with physical uh, material gain, these type of things, and comfort, what they feel is comfortable. They don't want to do that. They want to make it so that they can do whatever they want, and people can't tell them what to do in a sense, right? And that's what we have today. So we have a small minority of people who are causing a ruckus. They don't want to hear about religion. They don't want to hear about that. What they're doing is sinful. So they cry out, calling people racists. And the new thing now is, what was it I heard the other day, that um, is it stoves are, if you have a stove, is it oven or something, that's racist? You remember what it was? It's like, it was the stupidest thing I ever heard. Um, Kitchens, that's what it was. If you have a kitchen, you're a racist. The new movement. Just heard it the other day. What are you gonna, yeah, exactly. Everybody's got a kitchen, you know. So how does that make you a racist? I mean, you've got people whose minds are have come unglued. They're crazy. They're meshuggah. And yet we're letting these people try and run our country, you know. Um, and it's ridiculous. But we're letting them, and I'm praying that this election coming up, that we can change a lot of these things. Um, and I mean, I know that not all the Democrats, but the far left are claiming that the Republicans are going to, if they get elected, they're going to become a tyranny. They're going to put people in jail that they don't like and stuff like that. Well, I'm sorry, that's not what they're going to do. The Democrats are already doing that. That's what the Democrats are doing. So what the Democrats, the far left, are accusing the Republicans of, they're already doing. They're already doing. It's a small group that they're appeasing, not the larger group. They don't care about care about what's right. They even said that, you know, that they will not uh, succumb to religious moral beliefs. They have their own beliefs. And when we see that with the legislation and stuff that they try and pass, the people they try and put in the government and judges, we need to be praying that that these judges and legislators get voted out. Because I'm sorry to say, but they are pure evil. This left wing. Here's the thing, you know. Nazism and socialism and communism. Nazism is a far left organization. Socialism is a little more left of Nazism. Communism is even further left, way out there on the fringe left. But they're all left. But because Nazism is to the right of communism, they claim that it's a right wing organization, but it's not. It's always been left wing. It's always been on the left. It's always been on the fringe of the left. Not all Democrats do believe that way. They've got good Democrats there that what we call the moderates, or blue, can't remember what it's called anyways, who are conservative Democrats who don't, but they're in the minority because all these left-wing wackos, Nazis, socialists, and communists are taking over the Democratic Party. And all the things they're trying to accuse the Republicans of, and I'm not saying the Republicans are without excuse, they've got their own issues. But these far left groups are the ones who are doing exactly what they're trying to say that Republicans are going to do. They're already doing it right now. Doing it right now. And people need to get their heads out of their butts and really look around and see what's going on. Whether you like Trump or not, it doesn't matter. Trump is just a man. But he's got great ideas. You know, when he was president, our economy got better than it had been in many, many decades. Back to Ronald Reagan, where he took our economy, was able to work with the Democrats at that time and make an economy that worked great. And then came the ones who ended up wrecking it for, you know, just whatever. But during the time of Trump, I'm not an official Trump supporter. I do like Trump. I will probably vote for him because I'm not going to I will never vote for a Democrat, ever, unless they do their changes. But their whole party thing in 2012, they had a vote to vote God out, keep God in their party or vote him out, and they voted him out. It's all on. It was all on the news. It was all on their when they made the vote. It was on TV. It was recorded. It wasn't made up. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's right there, and that's the problem too. Is that a lot of these far left wing nutcases, even though you got the evidence there that shows that these are things they've done, they'll say, "Oh, that's just a conspiracy," just like all these other things that are going on, trying to get you to look like the bad person. And that's the thing is that right now, if you are a good person trying to do good for others, you're a good religious person, loves God, trying to walk in His ways, they think of you as the nutcase, right? But the problem is that you're right. They are the nutcases. They are the insane trying to run the asylum. They've taken over, and we need to send in the Marines and SWAT and take back. Not talking about violence. We need to vote. We need to vote them out. We need to see what's real, see what's truth, and get things changed around, because these small groups are wreaking havoc on our families. I mean, they're even saying that if you're married and have children, if you have a mother and father, then you're racist. I don't know where that comes from, but that's another thing they were starting. I think it was last year they started saying that. Now, if you have a kitchen, you're racist. I mean, what is going on? These guys are crazy. Yeah. Exactly. Even kids can see that that's ridiculous. you know. But as we go through this, we see that we have the mixed company, we have the mixed crowd, right, of people that came out with Israel, and they're joining with Israel. They're not a large majority, but they're a loud voice. They're not a majority, they're a minority, and they're crying with a loud voice, complaining of free food. Um, I am against illegal immigration, which is going on. I have no problem with legal immigration, but the illegal immigration that's going on is wrong. We're putting them up in hotels, and they're not happy about it. They want something better. We're giving them free food, but they don't like the food. They want something else. I mean, they're not happy, and this is what we see here. They're complaining about anything they get, like a spoiled brat would do. Think that they deserve everything. You know, slavery reparations is another thing. I agree with what's being said, is that if you weren't a slave, you don't get anything, because there were reparations made after the Civil War. The slave families were given free land, free seed, and whatever else they needed to get started to build up their farms and businesses. All this stuff was done back then. And now you've got people who are freeloaders, think that everybody should pay them who weren't slaves. Sure, their ancestors were slaves. Look, my ancestors were slaves too back in Egypt. You think I should go back to Egypt and tell them, hey, you owe me, right? Or how about the Irish who came to America as slaves? Don't forget about them. They should go back to the British government and say, hey, we need reparations. And England is the one who brought the slaves to America anyways. And yes, we did keep it going for almost 100 years. But we did get rid of it, and we had to fight a war to get rid of it. Because why? Because the Democrats, who's still doing the same thing, didn't want to give up their slaves, and they still don't want to give up their slaves. So they're coming out with all kinds of ways to keep their slaves. But this time, it doesn't matter what color they are. They want everybody to be a slave to them, to the government that they want to put in place. That's why they're trying to control every aspect of people's lives. What you can buy, what you can't buy, where you're going to live, if you can have children. I mean, there was legislation in the 80s in some states where they tried to get past that only certain people could have kids. One of them was North Carolina, that they tried to pass it. Of course, it was defeated soundly and then hasn't been brought up since, but people are still talking about it. That only government sanctioned people should be able to have children. And that's wrong too. But that's what we're going in that sense. So, but here's the thing. Here's the neat thing is that God allowed this mixed company to join Israel. And not all of them were doing this. We got to realize that too. That not all of Israel was complaining. Not all of these mixed company were complaining. It's talking about the ones who were making the biggest fuss. You know, an old saying that the squeakiest wheel gets the oil, right? And that's kind of what goes on. But God has promised them and us, promised those who are not of Israel, join themselves to Israel, that they will be my people and I will live among them. They will join Israel. Then many nations will join themselves through Israel. And that's what we get forward to, whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, is that as we see this, talking about the companies of Israel, the tribes and stuff, and how they went, those people who weren't descendants of Abraham joined the tribe in which they lived in and became part of that tribe, a part of Israel proper. Now, they didn't necessarily become Jewish, right? They were still considered the mixed crowd, but of Israel, they're part of the nation, so they were given that status as part of Israel, Israel as a nation. But we have three different parts of Israel. We have the priests who were separate, and they dwelt in the center. Well, God dwelt in the center of the camp, and you have on three sides. And then you had all of Israel outside that. So you got three groups right there, three different callings. The priests, whom God is going to, has, you know, it's still going on today, but once the temple is rebuilt, or the altar is what we're looking for, the priesthood will start up again. The priesthood that God established here on earth and said it would be forever. Aaron's descendants would be priests forever. Will be priests here on earth. And then you have the Levites who help the priests. They don't do the sacrifices and stuff like that, but they gather the firewood. They take care of the animals, just like in Luke talking about the flocks that were out in the mountains there, in the hills, during Sukkot. The shepherds there were Levitical shepherds who were watching all the flocks and stuff, because they were to be offered. They were to be part of the offering for Sukkot. Okay, that's why they were out there. And after that time period, any of the animals that were out there would have been taken to the lower elevations, because it gets cold up there in the wintertime. So we know it wasn't in December, which is one of the most ridiculous things anyways. And it wasn't at Hanukkah. I've heard people try and say that. And it wasn't at Passover, because I've heard that one too. But it was at Sukkot, which is perfect timing for that, God's appointed time. But they took care of the things that the priests, so the priests could be free to offer up the offerings and all these other jobs that the priests had to do. So the Levites took care of the other stuff. They had the Levitical choir, which is back. They sing beautiful the songs and stuff. We've kind of listened to them sometimes on YouTube. They have a record on stuff. Lev HaOlam is what they're called. Anyways, wonderful singing and everything like that, you know. And so they have their job to do. Well, then Israel. Then you have Israel proper, outside of the priests and the Levites, and you have Israel. Okay? You have Israel. And within Israel, you have the tribes, but you also have from the nations who have joined themselves to Israel. And I think it's important too, because one of the things we need to look at is found in chapter 8 of Zechariah, 8:23. Starting in verse 20. Adonai Sabaoth says, in the future, peoples and inhabitants of many cities will come. The inhabitants of one city will travel to another and say, we must go to ask Adonai's favor and consult Adonai Sabaoth. I'll go too. Yes, many peoples and powerful nations will come to consult Adonai Sabaoth in Jerusalem and to ask Adonai's favor. Adonai Sabaoth says, when that time comes, 10 men speaking all the languages of the nations, so representative of the nations, 10, minyan, quorum, will grab hold of the cloak, or in the Hebrew it's kanaf, which is corner, not cloak, but kanaf, and in the corner is the tzitzit. Will grab hold of the cloak of a Jew and say, we want to go with you because we have heard that God is with you. And that Jew is the Messiah. That Jew is the Messiah. Yeshua wore tzitzit, which represent the Torah. He did not do away with the Torah. If he did away with the Torah, changed anything in there, then it would disqualify him as the Messiah. He didn't. He upheld it. He upheld. The traditions are good, but you need to make sure you're keeping the weightier things, the things from the Torah. And don't let traditions walk the wrong direction, right? So traditions are good in the sense as long as they're helping keep you with in the walk with God. But anytime a tradition tries to be above God's instructions in the Torah, then that's wrong. We need to be careful of those things. That's why it's so important to study and everything like that. But the nations will come, and they will take hold of the corner of a Jewish man's cloak, you might say. You could use that word there. And they will join themselves to Israel. They're not, that's the one thing is that we've read also that God is making one new man of both Jews and Gentiles, right? But you can't make one new man of Jews and Gentiles if all the Gentiles become Jewish, right? It doesn't work that way. And that's why Rav Shaul even said, stay as you were called. If you're Jewish, stay Jewish. If you're circumcised, stay circumcised. If you were uncircumcised, don't become circumcised. Because circumcision has nothing to do with salvation. Being a part of Israel has nothing to do with salvation. We've got so many people out there that worship the Jews, the garment, these type of things, the things that the Jewish people wear, but they really don't understand the reasons why these things are worn or put on, or even worshiping the Jews themselves. That's what we see a lot of in like the Noahide movement, is they're not really worshiping God as much as they are worshiping Jews. And it's also a way that some of the Orthodox can try and get away with, we're not going to do any proselytizing, any conversions. You can join the Noachites and you're good, Anyways, the thing is that the promise is that the nations will become part of Israel, and Israel proper will be a mixed company, but everyone will be required to walk in God's Torah, walk in His ways. Just like Yeshua said in Matthew 5, those who don't keep the commandments and teach others not to keep the commandments will be least in the kingdom. But those who do the commandments and teach others to keep them will be great in the kingdom. And A long time ago, the church swallowed a big lie because of anti-Semitism, because of the Romans and other cultures who didn't like the Jewish people. And they began to basically say that Yeshua did away with the Torah and stuff. They even came up with um, changes, like they said no more keeping God's appointed time, Christmas, Easter, some of these other things. But we're not going to keep Passover. We're not stuff. Um, and we're also going to change the calendar too. So we're going to get away from their lunar calendar and we'll go to a solar calendar, which was very much in use during the time of the Romans. And we'll have eventually, as the Gentile church began to take over and the pagans really started to take over, they began to distance themselves from anything Jewish, including no longer following when Passover would be. Then they would say, if Passover is here, then we know that the resurrection day will be on this day. So they went away from that and went to the equinox, vernal equinox, that type of thing, and moved the Sabbath from the seventh day to the first day, which is interesting because Joab, the king of the northern tribes, did the same thing to control the people so they wouldn't go down to Jerusalem. He would lose them to Judah. So he built two temples in the north and changed the dates and times of worship and stuff like that so that he could control the people. So, I mean, there again, we see the trying to control the people, trying to get them to not follow God's instructions and stuff, right? But the time is coming that when Messiah comes and sets up his kingdom, he's going to come and he's going to gather his people from the four corners of the world, and those nations that have taken hold of Israel, who have taken hold of his Torah, of his tzitzit, will be taken back to the land of Israel. He will set up his he will rebuild the temple, and then he will go forth and conquer the nations. And then it says also that those nations that survive will go up every year to the festival of Sukkot, because Sukkot is the festival for the nations. Tabernacles, God dwelling with us, right? And all be a part of that. And not only that, but it also again promises in Ezekiel that the time is coming when that we are no longer to consider the foreigners, but to be known as those who are born in the land. Part of Israel proper, not necessarily Jewish, but from the nations, and to be given an inheritance in the tribe in which they dwell, right? That's the promise, that we all dwell together, one new man, both Jew and Gentile dwelling together. I like how Sid Roth puts that. He has a book out there too called that, One New Man Ministries, that's another one. But it's both Jews and Gentiles becoming one together in God, in Yeshua, being one in Israel. One nation, Israel. That's what we get to look forward to, is one new man, being one new man, one people. And of course, Israel has the calling, so we're joining Israel. It's not Israel joining the nations. It's not Israel joining the church, I'm sorry to say, but there is no place in the prophets talking about the church. It talks about the nations joining Israel. How do they join Israel? Through Yeshua the Messiah. Just as Israel, when they accept Yeshua as the Messiah, those from the nations also accept Yeshua as the Messiah. They're accepting his kingdom, which is what? Israel, not Rome. Rome is a pagan city, always will be, always has been. Just the way it is. It's another antithesis to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the holy city that God has called, has picked for his name to be put on. Okay? And so as we come to the end of this, this is another way that God had commanded Moses to put his name on the people, right? So please bow your heads as we say the priestly blessing. Our God and God of our fathers, bless us with a threefold blessing in the Torah written by the hand of Moses, your servant, and pronounced by Aharon and his sons, the priests, your holy people, as it is said. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May it be your will. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May it be your will. May the Lord turn his face towards you and grant you peace. May it be your will. Yevarecha Adonai vayishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. This week, Tuesday night is our Torah. We'll be on book 37, which will be Shalach Lecha. And then we'll be having we'll still have Shabbat service on next Saturday, next Shabbat, 28th, 29th. Can't remember. Anyways, next Shabbat. And then Shabbat on July 6th, we will not be meeting. We'll be down in Iowa. We'll be bringing our granddaughter back to her mom and dad. We're going to meet halfway from them from Arkansas, us from Minnesota. So anyways, so be praying for us there. Hope to have a good time again with family as well. But anyways, I pray everybody has a great rest of Shabbat and a great week this week, and we'll see you later. So Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom.